Hello, welcome to this Drawing to Digital workshop. My name is Michael Peck and I'm an artist, designer and also the creative director here at LCI Melbourne who are hosting this great event. I'll be collaborating with the digital design genius Max Amner to teach some introductory practical and creative ways to take hand-drawn sketches and use Photoshop to develop and extend them into digital artworks. In terms of equipment, you'll need two kinds of equipment. You'll need something to do the drawing stage with. You'll need a sketchbook, something with good paper, preferably something which you can draw on with pen and ink. And you're going to need a couple of fine liners. I've got a 0.4 fine liner and I've also got a special brush fine liner which allows me to have varied lines when I'm drawing. I've also got a pretty nice technical drawing pencil which is going to give me really fine lines just to mark out my drawing from the start. In terms of the digital component that Max is going to walk you through, you're going to need access to Photoshop, which you can download from the Creative Cloud website. And with that, you can easily get a free trial if you don't want to pay for it right away. The trial lasts for about a month and you'll get a lot of practice with it. And you're going to need to download that onto your computer so that you can go through the processes of learning some Photoshop skills. We hope that the workshop gives you a taste of what LCI Melbourne can offer. If you have any questions at all afterwards about our course, our curriculum, or our campus, don't hesitate to get in contact. Enjoy the video. Okay, so welcome to this video on drawing an eye using the cross-hatching technique. There's not an enormous amount of equipment that you really need for this. I've just got a good grey lead pencil, technical drawing pencil. It's got a 2H grey lead in it, which means that it's fairly fine and fairly light. I don't really want to be able to see the marks from the grey lead that I've created here. They're going to get rubbed out at the end anyway. Basically, I've already prepared the drawing part of this, which is the outline, just so that I know where I'm actually going to cross hatch over. You can do that in a number of ways. You can trace the image off, or you can you can grid up your image to get things in proportion. But I always find that initial drawing is a really important part of making sure that the final artwork ends up being successful. So I've also got a couple of fine liner pens that I'm using. I've got a 0.4 pen here, which will make a fairly nice fine mark, not too thick. And I've also got a really good, it's called a brush pen. And what that is, it actually ends up drawing a little bit more like what a brush might look like. So you can get thin and thick lines with that. And it just sort of allows for there to be a bit more of an organic line in your drawings. So like I said, this is going to be an exercise in learning crosshatch, and this is a really good one, especially if you want to import your drawings into a digital setting like Photoshop, where you want to be able to add extra to them. Something where you're drawing fairly dark lines rather than something which has got a lot of grey in it is going to actually be easier to transport into, say, a program like Photoshop, and then to be able to work with, to select the drawing and manipulate it further. So the simple act of crosshatch is basically using a build-up of lines next to each other in order to be able to create darker and lighter sections within your drawings. So if I've just got one direction of lines there, and then I've got the same direction here, but then I add to it to make it darker, then very simply, I've got two different shades. I can do that again. Now 1, 2, and then I could choose a different direction. And very, very quickly, I've created 3 different tonal values, which I could use to draw an entire drawing with. Sometimes I might build them up all the way until they're black also. So I could have a really light one. I could even go lighter where you're just separating the lines out further. But you can see it goes from light, darker, darker, really dark at the end. And you could build them up until you've got no white showing through from the paper. And then that's going to be a black section. So with our drawing today, the first section I'm actually going to focus on is going to be the pupil and the iris. And I'm actually going to do this first of all, not on where I actually want my final drawing to be, but I'm just going to show you something really important about when you're drawing the eye. I always think this is the most important part of drawing the eye, especially if you choose a pupil and an iris which has got a bit of a reflection in it. It's actually going to help create a better sense of realism and even photorealism, because it's things like reflections on surfaces, reflections in water, reflections on glass, all those kinds of things within your paintings and drawings that actually help it to look more real. So if I move this over here, I'm actually going to draw a practice version of an iris before I actually go onto the first. So my iris basically is going to be a circle, and then it's got the pupil in the center. Now these don't need to be perfectly circular. Sometimes, you know, if you look at an eye really closely, it's never completely perfectly circle. But the one thing you want to make sure is that you get the curve around the outside, curve on the pupil there. And also in this case, in my drawing, in the photograph that I'm drawing from, I've got this nice big reflection in there, which actually creates this really nice reflective surface, which helps break up that surface of the iris and the pupil. So I'm going to draw that into here, and I can see it kind of starts, in this case, it starts from about the center of the pupil, runs almost over the edge of there. And what I've got now is kind of a wedge shape. It's just one of those things to look at when drawing, to try and make sure that you outline something like this, because in my drawing, because I'm working black on white, this is actually going to be one part that I don't want to touch with the pen, or I want to touch it very little with the pen. And it's those other areas like the pupil, which is really dark in the center, which I'm going to put a lot of cross hatching in, and the iris, which is going to have a little bit less in there. But there's also this really strong shadow up the top here, which I'm going to include, which is sort of where the eyelid is casting a shadow over the eye there. So I'm going to include that in there also. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 0.4 fine liner just to start building these tones up to show you the process. So start with the pupil. And one thing I do is I never go too dark right from the start. I might just kind of build it up a little bit. The other thing I'm going to try not to do is to put a really solid outline around everything. So I've got that shadow, which is up the top. You can see it's also a bit darker around the edges of the eye. And through the whole thing, I'm actually going to, in this case, I'll fan out from the center. And then I'm just going to gradually build up some more darker sections where I can see the really strong shadows. And I'm just making sure that I vary the direction of my marks. Now I'm going to make that center section in the pupil quite dark. And there's some little variations in the eye also where I can see that there's sort of like some different discoloration in there. So it's a little bit of shadow there, a little bit there. So I'm going to add those in because it's all those little bits that help your drawing look really great. Okay, so that's a little practice just to sort of show that important part. I always think it's good to start right from the center in an eye, and then you work your way around. All these really slight shadows around there are going to come into play also, but making sure that I get that bit done right is a really important beginning. All right, so now I'm going to work on my actual drawing that I'm going to do, which is going to include basically his eye, the eyelid, bit of the eyebrow, and some of these really fine shadows which are around there, just to set it in place. So again, I'm going to start from the center. And building up a little bit of a dark section there. And then I'm just gonna throw some lines just across the eye here, across the iris, just to create a little bit of a middle tone there. And darken the edges a bit around there. And as I'm doing the drawing, as I do different sections of it, I'm probably gonna come back and readdress this part just to adjust it. But I always try not to go too dark from the start, because once you've gone too dark, you can't really go backwards from there. Okay, now I'm going to start to set that in place. So I'm going to draw just some similar, all lines going in the same direction for where I want that eyelid to be. And now, eyelids are normally quite complicated. You've got this one part which folds over the eye itself, and then you've got a number of rolls which are over there, and you're going to define those with different shadows. So I'm going to use some more line work here to define the top roll where the shadow is there. I've got these interlocking shadows here. Now at the moment I'm just doing all my lines in one direction. But one thing I can start thinking about is also thinking of starting to replicate some of the curves which are actually in the face. So if I look closely at the eye there, it's starting to curve there, but it also starts to curve inwards. So I'm actually going to start to replicate that a bit. So I'm starting to follow the contour of the face. So try not to make all of your lines too straight, especially when you're drawing something like a face. Okay, and I can start to darken up some of those shadows now too. Now, one thing to really look at when you're drawing an eye is to think about the really fine details that are in there, especially in this part which are around the edges of the eye. In order to set it in place, you've really got to think about the edges. Where does the eye kind of start and where does it finish? I'm just going to let this build up nice and slowly at the moment. So it's starting to take form nicely. And it's in these other areas where I've got some fairly light sort of shadows. I don't really want to make them too dark. And what I might do is I might build the lines so they're close together there where it's a little bit darker, and then make them get further and further apart as I go down through that shadow. Just so it gradates, just by having those lines getting further and further apart from each other. Got a fairly subtle shadow just under his eye there also. And this eyelid now, I can see that I can make it really a fair bit darker than it is. I can go almost a black with this one. Okay. And keep working on these lighter shadows. It's all these really subtle shadows which just allow your drawing to really work well, and sometimes they're actually the hardest ones to work on. Now start working on his eyebrow. And with the eyebrow, I really am just sort of building up the direction that I can see his hair's going in. So I can see that kind of moving fairly horizontally across, and then they start to curve down, and they start to come in from different directions. So they're coming in from there, but right from here, they sort of work along horizontally. And I'm not going to try and draw every single one. I'm just going to try and pick up on that movement that's creating. And once I'm starting to get that in shape, I'm going to start to build up how dark it is. So I can see it's a lot darker in this section, and then it sort of fades off, tapers off on the edges. Okay, so it's starting to take shape quite nicely, but I've still got a bit of work to do here just to finish it off. I think I can darken the whole drawing up a fair bit. There's some extra little shadows in here which are around, which are between the eyelid and the eyebrow, that I think I can darken up just to give it a little bit more realism. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm actually going to try and follow that curve which is in there. You're always trying to look for those really subtle differences between shadows. Now I start to focus on some of those real key points. Something which always helps the eye look really good is trying to get some of those reflections in that spot there where you've got the eyebrows and the eyelashes being reflected. So I'm going to get those in there too. We've got these other little hare's eyelashes down below which are coming out. Just to set the eye back a little bit, I'm just going to darken the eyeball just that little bit, just to make it so it's not quite as light, because it's sitting back in the recess. It should be slightly darker than I've done it. Just a little bit of a shadow there. All right, and one final thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my brush tool, which is a little bit darker, and it's the one which allows me to have some thicker lines, but because it's got a rubber tip on it, you can actually create a nice tapered line. And I'm going to actually using that to darken up the eyebrows just a little bit, just to create some variation. All right, so there we have it. That's my my eye that I've drawn. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that, I'm either going to photograph it on my iPhone or I'm going to scan it, and then I'm going to import it into Photoshop. I'll open it up as a JPEG, and I'll be able to do all sorts of other things with it in there to take it from the physical drawing, the hand-drawn drawing, into a digital drawing. Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Max, and I'm going to be taking you through the second stage of the drawing process, and taking Michael's drawing and putting it into Photoshop and playing around with it. So let's have a go. So what I have is I have Michael's scan drawing, and I'm going to take you guys through a range of steps which I would kind of use to kind of get your kind of performance of your artwork up in a range of steps. What I will be using and referencing is a set of colours that I have used here from a peacock feather. I've selected some of the colours from Photoshop, and I'll be using those because I'm going to take his eye and essentially play with it and make it a peacock feather. So I'll also be using a watercolor texture, and this is something that I want to kind of use just to give it some background grain, and what you'll notice is this is a black and white, but you can use any color you like. I just tend to start off with the black and white, and you'll find out later why. So one of the things we want to do is to cut out some of the dirt and scratches, and this is the first part that we tend to use. I want to get rid of some stuff like that, and there are ways that a lot of people would use. Maybe they would go and take a brush and kind of draw over these, but I kind of tend to want to kind of play around with it a little bit more and choose some different techniques. Now, Photoshop has changed its focus recently away from more of the kind of destructive ways of working with it, and so that can change some of the options. I'll show you some techniques which I would use nowadays, but it's not strictly, that amazing either way. Now, some of the technologies that they have had, so you've got here object selection we can use, but I want to crop out as much of the image as possible and work with it in that kind of way. Okay, so I am going to firstly have a look at what ways we can play around with this. So I'm actually going to transform this a little bit by cropping it, and I'm going to straighten it as well, because I want to straighten the image a little bit to make it more of a peacock feather in mind. So I actually want to get the line from here to here. Okay, so I can go to my straighten tool and kind of click a line and go, that's kind of the way I want it to be directed, and that's okay. The crop is, I don't want to crop everything out, so I'll just go to there, and that seems to be all right. Move up a bit maybe, yeah, that'll do. Okay, and I can add that crop in there. Now that's got rid of some of the the fluff that I don't really want. I will actually paint these out by moving the white to the foreground, just painting some of these dodgy areas out here. I would tend not to worry too much about that. I just want to make sure I've got all the crop in from the edges. I don't want to have any undue empty areas. Just make sure, there we go. And on that side, that'll just save me a bit of time later on. Maybe a bit of dirt there. So I wouldn't worry too much about kind of filling out this dirt, because we are actually going to be using a different technique. And what I will try and do is make sure that we utilize the power of computers rather than spending time trying to, clean up little bits and pieces here and there, because the computer really, you need to utilize it properly for what you're trying to do. I might actually get rid of that hair there though. just because. There we go. Oh dear, Control Z, get rid of that dirt. And that's one of the reasons why I don't want to kind of use that technique too much, because I don't want to accidentally cut into things. So that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. I may, shall I get rid of those? Yeah, go on then. Might as well. There we go. Just to clean it up a little bit. Now I will actually go to use my object selection tool. It's kind of useful. I've actually got it on the lasso setting, so I can kind of walk around here. You can just have it as a square, but I will just kind of walk around. Like so, and see what it does. Okay, so it's selecting reasonably well, not around that area there, but this is the kind of look that I kind of want to have. But I'll just Control D to deselect that at the moment and see if I can't clean it up a little bit. So, firstly, what we want to have a look at is its mode. Now, when I imported this, it was actually in grayscale. Depending on how you scan your image, you will have a variety of different options with scanners. If you take a photograph, it will be in RGB. But I just quickly want to mention this. So there are three ways in which a scanner scans. There is optical character recognition, which is for scanning text, which can sometimes, depending on your scanner, can turn it actually into physical text, which you can copy. And the whole point of that is it's just pure black and pure white. It minimizes file size and makes the readability of your characters better, and also sometimes translates it into text that you can actually cut and paste. That is not good at all for photography and scanning images or drawings. So you would want to choose a grayscale scan or a color scan, and then obviously up the pixels per inch as much as you possibly can. The more pixels you have, the more quality you can keep. Essentially, you can't really reduce the scale of things down without losing quality, even though there's lots of methods and tweaks that you can do to kind of elevate that. It's not as good as having more pixels, essentially. So I've actually pushed this into RGB, and the reason why, so RGB is essentially working with color from a light perspective, and CMYK is looking at color from a print ink perspective. This is not 100% the rule, because there are printers that print in RGB, but I would suggest that is the rule that the exception that defines the rule, let's say. But RGB color is what I tend to work in Photoshop, because it allows us to use all filters and all kind of layer options. And then once you are finished with that work, then you can convert it to a CMYK. The CMYK color spectrum is smaller than the RGB, because RGB can actually push a more vibrant light, whereas inks cannot achieve that kind of vibrance, as it were, that diffusion of light. So once I've changed the color mode to RGB, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the adjustment and the exposure of this. So here's my little exposure window, and I'm going to just push up the exposure until, if you notice here, the exposure of these kind of things are good. Okay, so that's fine. Get rid of all those. That looks okay. There are other options. You can go to curves, or you can go to levels. I'll just select levels for now. So you can see here, I've got essentially a lot of dead area, and the mountains tend to be where most of the information is. So I can actually push this right here, but you'll see I'm losing information because this is not right at the bottom. If this was right at the bottom, I would not lose any quality. And so I can just push it to somewhere like there. You want to try and give as much range as you possibly can, because that is information that you would be losing. So I've got a rich black here. You can choose the black picker to go, that is what I want to be black, and the white picker, that is what I want to set as the pure white value. And that looks okay. I'll click on OK to that. That's really cleaned things up a little. We've still got a little bit of dirt and scratches there, but the more we take away from the image, the less it looks like an actual drawing with slight issues maybe. And I could clean these up. And if I was doing this as a professional piece of work, I would tidy those up. But at least with the brush, I've now minimized those things. I can Control plus or Control minus, move into these areas, and kind of zoom in and just take out these little bits like that. But I could spend hours doing that, and that's of no particular value other than to scratch the OCD itch. So Control 0 back to the full screen mode. Now, if you're working on a Mac, the only difference you're going to find is when I say Control plus or minus, Control whatever it is, convert that Control button to Command, and then you'll be fine. So there's our image. Happy with that, and that's kind of okay. If I wanted to make it more of a kind of vector style, which this does kind of lead towards, then I would have actually put this image into Illustrator and used a live trace and stuff like that. So, but we want to keep this as it is. So that's fine now. Now I will go to my box select, and hopefully now this might be too close to the edge, and that's why it's having an issue. So we'll have a look at this, and oh, hello, wrong one. Yes, that's true. Go around here, try and select this area, and what I want to do is to have a kind of smooth kind of edge. I might end up trimming off some of the other images, but hey ho, that's the way. I actually find this problematic with, and I'll just use some of this here, using the Alt button, see if I can get rid of this. There we go. Oh, it's not doing a very good job. Not enough pixels. I'll go to good old lasso, and I will subtract. Now these are criticisms that I would actually have of Photoshop and Adobe in general, because this is not something which I would normally have used, and they used to have better tools. They seem to have decided to get rid of some of them in their infinite wisdom, but such is the way. Anyway, that's fine. And I want to actually have a bit more of an edge than that. So I'll go to select, and I'll modify this selection, and I want to expand the border. So once you expand the border, I'll expand it by, let's say, 10 pixels, and that's just pushed the edge away. I am getting rid of that now, which is annoying again, but I'll just hold down Alt and get rid of these little blobs that I don't really want. There we go. And I am cutting some of these things out. Again, if this was a proper job, I would do it slightly differently, but this is for speed rather than anything else. So I'm happy with that, and I'll press Control J, or Command J. And what that does is that does a copy and paste in place. And there it is. I've got rid of that, and you may wonder why I'm doing that, but that will come into play a bit later on. I'm going to use this and save this as my kind of back-end copy, and I'll work with that. And this will be my kind of play toy, as it were, for now. So the second thing I'll do is I'll set up my watercolor. Now, I want to use this to make a colored background. Okay, so one of the things I've done, sometimes you can see here, I've got a little kind of, what's it called? Smart object, that's the one. And so I just right click on there if I want to. Oh, hello. Right click on there, and I can rasterize that layer. It doesn't make so much of a difference, but what you'll notice today, for some of you who have used Photoshop, is you may be saying to me, why aren't you using adjustment layers? And so on and so forth in the more modern way of doing it. And really what I'm trying to do here is do a speed run, as it were, through Photoshop. And I will be working destructively, which normally I would not recommend, but I'm going to work non-destructively and then destructively, just for speed. But what I want to do here is push up the values of the grey, because it's very mottled at the moment. So image adjustments, and I will just choose levels rather than curves, because it gives you the histogram, which gives you a visual reference, which will be more useful to beginners, as it were. And I'll click on this black area and I'll push it up, and you'll notice all this area here has got no information on it, so it's dead area. So if I push it to here, I don't go any further than that, because that's where the information starts, and you can see the foothills to the mountain tops and back down to the bottom. And I've pushed this up, and so I've got a defined black and a defined white area, and that's fine. And that's kind of what I want to have. I don't want it to be too hectic. I do want it to be pronounced enough, though, and that's fine for me. What I am actually going to do is also make a new layer, and I'm going to give it a kind of greyish colour, just there. Okay. I will then use my paint bucket and throw it in, put it behind, get my watercolour. I'm actually going to turn that from an ordinary into a multiply, and what that does is it gets rid of all the white aspects or elements of the pixels and converts them into a transparency. So multiply gets rid of all the white pixels and converts, so if it's 50% white, 50% black, it will be 50% black, 50% transparent. Screen is the opposite. It gets rid of all the blacks and makes all the blacks transparent. And then overlay is kind of like an acetate kind of thing. So multiply is what I want, and I'm actually going to then grab that, hold down shift, right click on it, and I'm actually going to merge those two layers. Now the reason why I've made this, I got rid of the white end of the bargain, is because I'm going to be forcing a color onto it. So as I mentioned before, I've got my kind of color palette, and what I want to do with this is I want to enforce these colors onto a whole series of these plates, as it were. So I'm adding a texture, kind of texture color wash, essentially. So I have actually selected all these colors. Now, there is a problem with Photoshop, which I think they should fix, but they haven't, and they may not care for it. And I'm sure there's other ways that you can do it precisely, but or maybe, who knows. But I actually want to just use a hue and saturation. And once I've clicked on the hue and saturation, I can actually colorize this layer and forcing a color upon it. And so you've got the blacks through to a color. I can push the saturation up. I can push the lightness up if I wish to, and I can change the hue of it. Now, the problem I have here is that hue, saturation, and lightness, HSL, is good for what I want to do. I'll just cancel that for now. But that hue, saturation, and lightness gives you a set of numbers which you can use. If I select a color, let's go to a color red here, hue, saturation, and brightness rather than lightness. Again, Adobe, I would choose a name and stick with it. And HSL is the standard, but these are the numbers which you would type in. But it also gives you a hexadecimal number here. And yet, when you go into the hue and saturation, it doesn't allow you to copy and paste those in. So I actually have to do it by eye. You can do the HSL, but who's got time for that is all I can say. But that's what you would do. And I've got, one color. And what I want to do is I want to do a gradient. So what I've actually done, rather than you watching me do this lots of different times, is I've actually got a whole range of them which I have created. I'll just hide those. And I've put them into folders. So I've got one which is a yellow and one which is an orange. And you'll see here I've actually got a mask on here. So this is a layer mask. And what this does, if I just go to hide that, is if I have these two open and I make this image adjust, hue, saturation, colorize, let's choose a green. Let's get the saturation up, click OK, hide that, go to this layer, image, adjust, hue, saturation, let's choose colorize, let's go for a red, let's push the red up, just so we can see it, There you go, click on OK. And then with the green layer, I can add a mask, and with a gradient selected, I can choose a radial gradient, click from the start point to the end point, and what you'll see is it'll actually give you a mask gradient, which I can change and place wherever I want. And this is kind of, this is a way of vignetting images, if you like, but it gives you a radial gradient or radial mask. And that'll become useful later. This is a non-destructive technique because I want to be able to kind of play around with it. And you can set up varying different forms of gradients. And I've got one gradient which I made. If you want to make your own, you can go here, new gradient. And in here you can add colors or whatever. I've just pushed this to here. And so I've got a very sharp gradient. And so when I actually click around, I can make quite a nice, there you go, to the end, and it only affects this area here, but does a smooth one, and that will become useful later. So rather than watching me do that, 6 times, I'll just take these, hold down Shift, grab those, Control C to copy, go into my eye layer, and Control V in there, and it pastes all of those in, ready for me to go. I will then grab this eye, put it onto the top like so. Now this eye I don't really want to touch very much, and I just want to make it a multiply. So as you can see, it's got rid of all the white and left all the black, and so now it's a acetate plate over the top of my colors. And what I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using different sections of this drawing to kind of mask out the different colors that I have and the gradients that I have. Okay, so the starting gradient will actually be at the bottom. So here we go, the bottom one here, because I'm going to layer these up as I go. And this is quite dark, but it will get kind of lighter as we go. And I've set these up, so I've got in each one, I've got the different colors that it grades from and to. So I'm in here, and I'm going to zoom into the eye. Oh, hello. Hello. And I press the space bar to turn this into the hand. You can use any control you like. It's telling me I can't work with it at the moment, but you press the space bar and you'll always turn it into the hand no matter what you're using. So I'm going to go to my pen tool. Okay, and you have options here of making a shape, but generally you want to just make a path. And I'm going to zoom into here. I will actually hide this so you can see this better, because I actually just want to have a look at it. I actually want to now make this eye a shape. So I want to look at where the eye kind of starts and stops, and I'm going to just do a rough cut. Okay, so that'll do around here. I would recommend, well, it's a different kind of, I would recommend when you're doing line art or this kind of option, you should try to cut. So see here, it's not a line. You should try and cut it so you don't have any of these areas like that. It's not, the end of the world. And again, it depends on your aesthetic choice. I will not comment on your aesthetic choice because that is what you want to do as an artist. And really, Photoshop has got so many options, and as an artist you've got so many artistic options available to you. It really is about learning your own practice and your own techniques, and using them the way you want to do them. Here is a very quick kind of mask. Again, I would have maybe spent a bit more time on it. Not really when I'm going around to these black areas, because they will actually be hidden behind. But I'll click on path here, and I've got my working path like so. Press Control and click, and that converts that into a selection. I could, of course, make it working path. Well, that's what it is. But if I Control D here, I can select this and go make selection. It'll give me the option to add feather to it, but it defaults to one feather, and that's perfectly okay for me. And that's what Control Click does. Go back to the layer here. And depending on how you want to do it, I've already got a mask on these two, and I kind of want to, I don't really need to select that. What I'm actually going to do is leave that one. I'm going to put this cut onto this next one here. Okay, so what this will do is I want to actually cut out from both here and here the color. So this is working destructively, and you can have another mask if you so desire, but I will just press delete here. Oh, sorry, Control Z. I actually want to delete what's outside of it, not what's inside of it, not what's outside of it. You can always tell because I've got dots going around here. So I'm going to inverse that selection. It should be called invert, but never mind. Click on that and then press delete, and then here and press delete. And now I can see through this layer. Control D, and that's okay. So I will just leave that as that for now, and I'm going to go back to this layer because I want to play with this mask. It will be a very subtle effect with this one, but it will become less subtle as we go on. So I'm going to go onto this mask, and I'm going to click and drag like so. And you can see that the kind of the purple going through to the dark is quite dark. It's probably a bit too much. Let's do that. There we go. So now I've got the darker layer, which is being masked over the lighter layer, and so I've got my radial gradient that suits the eye. I'm not going to use radial gradient all the time. I will do some of it by hand, but seeing as it's circular and we are using a radial gradient, that works quite well. So now I've got this one, I'm working on the blue, and I want to again work with this mask, and I don't need to worry about what's outside of this eye, but I'm actually going to go around and kind of make another selection of the eye. So I'm going to work up to the next one, and I'm going to now make another path. Now this path is still here. I can save that path and I can load that path up again, but I'm working in speed motion, so I'm just going to use the pen, zoom in, and now I'm going to set up just this eye area here. So I'm going to go around, zoom in a little bit. Again, this may change, and I'm just doing this for speed more than anything else. Follow this line. Follow this line. La, 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 la. Maybe go a little rogue here. That's okay. Sticking within the black. Go that way. Good. If I click, I can also press the space bar and move that if I wish. That's fine. Click on here. Let's go that way around. Click, click, click. Now I've got an area here which I can I'll just jump to here. Maybe that's wrong, but never mind. I can do something else later with that if I need to. You can always come back and move those, change those, maybe minus that, and that kind of brings that around. That's fine. I could also go to my direct selection tool and select each one individually. Generally what you want to do with that though is make your full path and then go back and kind of play with it later on. The path in Photoshop, if you're used to working in Illustrator, is a bit cumbersome, but then it's Illustrator is really more for working with vectors, and therefore the tool is kind of optimized more efficiently in Illustrator. But that's fine. That's definitely doable in Photoshop. There's a new one. You'll notice it's got rid of the old one. So if you are going to want to come back to those, you would save those and load those up and play with those bits. I shan't. Go to here. In the path. Control click. There we go. Make it into a selection. Go back. Control 0 Yes, we need to inverse that selection inverse. And then I'm just going to cut from this rectangle, press delete or backspace, and this one to delete. There we go. And then we've got our blue eye, Control D, deselect. And now I'm going to go to my mask for the blue layer, zoom in a little bit, grab my gradient tool. I probably will continue with the gradient tool here. There we go, that's kind of okay. I actually want the light blue to be on the edge, so I'm going to throw that mask away. Delete, don't apply, move the blue up the top, add a new mask using black and white. If you use different colors, it's not going to work. It's black and white is the one. Black for basically see-through, white for non-see-through, and that's the way computers think. It's very, very literally binary. So you've got to, that's the machine vision essentially. Black is what is not selected and white is what is selected. So essentially you're telling the computer to differentiate between two, a selected state and an unselected state. That's how it essentially sees. Computers are very intelligent, but they're also not so intelligent. Until, obviously, you're talking about AI. Next one is going to be this area here and this area here. Talking of AI, Adobe does work with quite a bit of AI, and what we saw there when we actually did the object selection, that was a section of technology which is AI. There's a lot of work to be done, let's put it this way. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, rather than play around with or make a new path, I'm actually going to play around with this path. And the reason why is because I want to keep all these edges here, but I'm going to extend it out to these areas here and these areas here. Okay, so and that will work with the next one. I'll just quickly check here. That's the one I want to work on. So good. Onto my paths here, and rather than re-pen tooling everything, I'm just going to go to my selection tool. Now you can press A and all of your things are here, and you've got two types of direction. You've got path selection, which selects the whole path, pretty useless. Direct selection though is the one we want. And I can click on the path and I can see all my points. Now I can add points to it if I wish. So what I'm going to do is press the space bar, zoom in to this particular area here, and I'm going to grab these points and move them. I'll take this central point and move it right to here. It's going to be pretty ugly at the beginning, but I can just add points as I go. I'm just going to grab that and extend that out. I can turn these Bezier or Bezier curves, whichever one you want to call it. Pretty sloppy job. Just turn that around. There we go. So that's kind of okay. Go to my pen tool. I can just add points as I go. 1, maybe 2. That'll do for there. Probably 1 there. A couple there. Click. And a couple here. I can add more if I wish. Grab the direct selection. Move this into the line. Move that into the line there. Push that up a little bit there so the line goes through. Move that to there. Move that to there. Maybe move that to there. Pull this around a little bit. I need to kind of move that down. Move that there to kind of fit it in to that curve. Move this to here. That'll do me there. That's okay. Move that in, move that down. Okay, so that covers that up. I mean, yeah, you can fiddle with that if you wish. Similar thing here. Move that. I'm going to move that out to here now. Nice and easy. As long as that line goes through, that's fine. Move that to there. Make that reasonably. Move that to there. Move that one out to there. Turn that around a little bit. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so didn't need to do anything particularly heavy there. And I've extended that out. Lovely. Control click. layer. And I want to move up to this next one, which is the green. And I will then that, remembering that we have this inverse that we need to do on this layer, not on the mask, on the layer. And we delete. And we delete, and there we go. And now we've got the brown. With this brown on here, I do actually want the edge to be black to white. So I'm actually going to start drawing these in now. I will start off with a gradient, just to start it from the center to here. See what that looks like. A bit more. That's kind of okay, but it's not working here. So this is when I go to my brush tool. Now, if I brush black on it, it will kind of add to this mask. So I'm going to make it reasonably hard like that. Just check the settings. I don't want the hardness because that would be a very hard edge. I want it to be very soft, 9 or 10. And I can just, using my brackets tool, I can extend those out. It'll make it proportionally softer, so that's kind of okay. And on this side I'll just do a little bit here, and that's kind of okay. That's all right. Lovely. If I'm not satisfied, I can just convert that to white, and I can do it back a little bit, like so. Okay, lovely. Right, that's good. I can collapse that down now, and I can start working on this next layer. Control D to deselect, and I will go to my path once more and my pen tool, and you can see repetitive process as we go. I'll just check to see how many colors we've got. So we've got green, we've got a darker green, and then we've got a kind of brown. So what I'm going to do is do darker green, green, darker green, and then I'm going to do the brown for the rest. So that's good. Back to my paths, and I'm going to work a bit more quickly now here. So hopefully this should be okay. We won't look too closely at it. From now on, we'll pretend that everything is lovely. And again, I'd spend a bit more time on this than I am at the moment if I was doing a professional kind of job of it. That's fine. Control click, select inverse, go to my layers, next layer up, and delete and delete. There we go. And that is okay. I probably will go back to no, I will start brushing now. Control D there because I'm working on the layer below, this one here. And I will use my black color. I will make this quite a bit larger now, and I'll actually get rid of that. I'm making and make a new one, and I will just going to want to go around the edge more than anything else now. Okay, just so it's kind of has a little bit of a gradient in there. That's fine. On to the next one, and back to my path. You'll see a process going around this side now. Go through this cross hatching. And again, because Michael has gone through this process of cross-hatching without kind of hard edges, he's defined it through the cross-hatching. It should work reasonably well with what I'm doing here. Hopefully complementary to what he's trying to do. So that's good. Again, next layer, the yellows. And I will select here, and I will delete, and I'll select here, and I'll delete. So we've got this dark green, Control D, go back to here. I will throw this mask away, delete that. So you have the darker area, make a new one, get my brush and start, lightening that area up. Soften that off. Okay, so that's good. And then I can actually start just working with this anyway. I might at this point grab this selection. Now you'll see if I just close these up, and this one, I've got that outer selection. So I can use the good old classic magic wand tool, click on the outside there, and I can then put these all back in and use that selection rather than making a path, and I can then just press delete and delete and I can actually work through the whole lot. Delete, 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 and that's just deleting all the edges. Delete and delete, and so we've got a white background there. And I'll go and do that again and use that again a bit later on. But that kind of does the edges. Again, I would do a lot cleaner job than that, but you'll get my point there. So that's fine. This final one here, I'm going to get rid of that, delete that and make a new layer. And I will use the brush, probably go pretty large now, and just kind of fade that off like so. Okay, so there we go. That's lovely. Now, just before I kind of finish this thing off here, what you'll notice is I've got an orange color and I've got the yellow color, and they do have those textures. What essentially we're doing here is we do have this multiply layer like so. So there's the actual colors behind it, and there's the image behind it. And we are essentially painting on blusher. If I make a new layer here and just, sorry, move that up out to the, I'll hide this up here. Because this is behind this layer, if I just choose any old color, like a red, let's say, I can just essentially paint, let's make it slightly smaller, can essentially just paint, change the hardness here, and I can just paint underneath the image like so. And that's what some of you guys may want to do, is just fill in the color. If this is a photograph of a person and you actually wanted to lay it on top of the image or the skin of that person, you'd actually put this on top and then make that the multiply layer. You can see it doesn't really make much difference here because it's red on black either way, but the skin tone of the person will shine through, and this red, because it's in the multiply, will actually apply the color to the skin pattern, as it were. And that is where you can make or you can apply makeup to someone in Photoshop, and it looks very realistic because it uses the actual skin texture, but it just overlays a color onto that skin texture, and you can then shade it darker or lighter using a variety of different options. But so same rule applies essentially, but we're doing this with kind of an artistic lens, as it were. Now I'm going to add some drop shadow. Reason why, just because I think good for a laugh. And so I'm going to select this folder here, and I will choose the one of the layers like so. Not this one because that's the bottom layer, but something like this one here. If I select the actual main one, go layer style, and go to drop shadow, you can see it drops the shadow around the outside. But it also should drop the shadow on the inside. We can't really see it on this eye because it's quite dark. If I turn the color to, let's say, a red, just so we can see, you can see the red going around. Can't really see the red going around there anyway, but never mind. So I probably won't apply it to that layer. So I'll uncheck that. Click on OK. But I will start applying it to the next one. So this one here, because you'll actually start seeing the difference. So it's a layer option. So layer style, drop shadow. And there you go. You can see that now affecting it. I will push it this angle. Shall I? I'll push it that angle. There we go. I don't want it to be red because that's silly. Push it to be black. That's fine. I can change the distance where I want it to be. I can change the angle of it. And there, maybe. Let's go there. Let's just stick to that kind of thing. Size. Let's keep it just a bit more dense. And what that does is just pops these layers out a little bit. And I will go to this one here now. Close that down. Just keep these closed. Layer style, and drop shadow. And I only really need to affect this once because it copies all of what I've just done prior to it, and it's added that now there. I can, if I wish to, change that up if I think it's too heavy. Layer style, drop shadow. One more, that's okay. And then this one here, layer style, drop shadow, and that should be the last one, but that affects that bottom bit there. So now we've got a kind of like we've got bits of card with a bit of distance between them. It looks terrible around the outside, and it does annoy me that it does a drop shadow on the edge of things as well. But that's okay, because what I'm now going to do is work ultimately destructively, and I'm going to grab all these layers here, right click on them, and I'm actually going to merge those layers. Hello? Merge layers. There we go. Now it's one big block. Completely destroyed all of my good work, but that's okay. I'm now going to go to this one, and if we can remember, we actually still have that as a selection. I can go to my magic wand, select on that, go to this color here, and then press delete and get rid of all of the external faff. Control D, and essentially that's it now. I'm kind of happy with that. So again, I'll work destructively. I'll grab that and those two, and I'm going to merge those selected layers and right click on it. And now I'm going to go a bit crazy town. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to press Control T, which is to rotate these kind of things. I've got a bit extra there, which I kind of need to sort out. So I might actually I'll cancel that. And I'm actually going to just tighten this up a little bit here, and tighten that up a little bit. There maybe. I'll just do that. That's fine. Double click, and that's fine. And that should now Control T be the actual object itself. Good. Now I'm going to rotate it like so. I'm then going to shrink it down. And when I shrink it down and I press OK to this, I'm actually going to be ruining or killing some of the pixels. But yeah, what are you going to do? So that's fine. Double click on that. It's okay. Now I'm going to grab this, hold down Alt. You'll see it has a little kind of icon change, and I can actually click and drag. And because I'm holding down Alt, it will now naturally just duplicate. Hold down Alt again. I can hold down Shift, and I can grab all three of these, Alt, and then hit Shift, and let's do another one of those, Alt and Shift, like so. Okay, that's good. I can grab those. Oh, hello. Control Z. Grab all of those. And I can now merge those layers together. And I'm going to put this up like so. I'll probably actually duplicate I'll leave that there for now. I'm going to Alt and grab and duplicate. And I'll put it down here. I'm going to Control T, make it smaller. Alt grab. Oh, hello. Double click, Alt grab. Like so. So I've got a longer one like that. Maybe Alt grab again, so on and so forth. Grab those three, right click and merge just those layers. And so I've got a long thin one and a larger one. What I can do is kind of, that's okay, I'll do that. I may want to, I would probably want a larger border of that, but I've got a kind of something like that. If you want, and I've got a larger one, I might actually just grab this and Alt, grab that one and make it longer, like so. Merge those two layers. And so I've got a long extension here. I can now go to something like distort, and I can do something like let's Control T, arc maybe. Arc, there we go. Arch. That's taken it right off. Bend 100%. And that's made it very large, but that's kind of okay. Now you may be going, what's going on? Control T. Now that's large, I can move this down here. And I am going to make it smaller, make it slightly smaller, that on this end, like so. That's okay for me. I can then duplicate that layer by taking it in there, Control T, rotate it around 100 whatever percent. There we go. And once those two are kind of locked together, I can grab that one and that one, and I can merge those two layers. Now I probably will throw this one away actually, and I'll take this ring and centralize it on the outside, and I am then going to make a duplicate copy, Control T, hold down Shift and Alt, and do that. Happy with that. Throw that behind. Duplicate that layer. Control T. Control Shift. Move that in like so. Control, I'll grab that. Control T. Shift and Alt. Move that in like so. Okay. Control T. Move it in like so. And I can do that kind of thing for a while. I'm actually going to bring this to the top. Bring this to the second top. Bring that to the third top. And so they're now one behind the other. If I wish, I can Control T and rotate. Like so maybe, and the other way. Okay, this one here, Control T, rotate again, stick them in the side, in the center, Control T. Seems to be kind of okay, but I'll just play with it. And this one, Control T. Now, rather than, obviously I'd spend more time doing this, but that will do for now. I will actually just merge these two to, no, I'll keep going. I will actually grab all these, Control and join them. I will then move those down to the bottom, like so, so they're underneath, Control T, and grab all of those together, Shift and Alt. Okay, that's fine. Now I've got a mismatch in the middle there, which I should have done, but yeah, that's fine. Grab that. Maybe select those ones rather than moving it down. Control T, and down to there. Double click. Control 0, zoom in, and now we're kind of looking at it reasonably nicely. I'm going to find out which one that is. Okay, so all those from there to there. Control T, bring it out a little bit just to cover that gap because I made an error. There we go. And I can do that ad infinitum. And what I can then do is maybe just start, I can make it a new layer, make it black and white, and take that new layer, place it, bucket, throw the bucket in with black, so that's fine. And then here I can just go adjustment, exposure, and I can bring the exposure down quite a bit. Click on OK. Image adjust, exposure, bring it down slightly less so. Next one, image adjustment, exposure. I want it to be reasonably large, this kind of thing. Adjustment, exposure. Something along those lines. Again, you'd get a bit more kind of crazy town if you want. And essentially, now I've completely. If I go that and that, F again, Control 0. I have essentially completely ruined poor old Michael's image. But you can see essentially what you can do with Photoshop, and hopefully that's gives you a broad kind of range of tools that you can use, and essentially shows you that anything's possible with Photoshop. So there we go. All right, I hope you enjoyed that, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully that's been very useful to you. See you later.